My lecture today is going to be a little bit different than years past. I've been feeling a little bit melancholy based on a couple of conversations that I've had with some of your peers years past. And I'm going to tell you those stories. First of all, I wanted to start with my story, however. I'm indeed a BYU graduate. I graduated from the Electronic Engineering Technology program over on the engineering side of campus many years ago. And then I got my MBA here at the Y. And at that time, it wasn't very cool to be an engineer and be entrepreneurial. It was kind of like saying, I don't know what doesn't go, it was oil and water. And so I remember in my junior year loving these entrepreneur lectures. But I didn't dare confess to any of my engineering associates what I was doing on, at that point, it was Thursday afternoons at 4 o'clock. So I would privately and carefully sneak over here up on the 7th floor, sit in the very back because none of the cool business guys wanted to hang out with some nerdy geek. And I'd listen to these lectures. And I have to tell you what an impact it had in my life. I remember Larry H. Miller coming. When he had just moved in, he was just starting and giving his insights. And it ignited a passion in me that, quite frankly, just never went away. So today I wanted to talk to you. Yeah, I'm going to give you some really practical, hardcore, good business advice. I'm going to give you some tools that rock your world. But before I do that, I wanted to lecture just a little bit on stories. Some stories that I've been thinking a lot about. I'm going to tell you 3, maybe 4. And I want to start by commenting that any plan that you have in your life, it's not a good plan. God's plan for you is far better than the plan that you have. I remember my engineering degree thinking, okay, my ultimate goal is if I can get a degree, and then I will go to Boeing, and I'll work as an engineer at Boeing, and they make $70,000 a year. I mean, that was like, you can't get any better than that. I'm so glad I didn't end up going to work for Boeing. I actually started working in a little technology company here in the Valley, and my senior project was, it was called Power Line Transmission, IPX SPX packaging protocol. It was the coolest technology in the world at that point. Believe it or not, there was a point when there was not wireless. And you would plug the power cord into the wall. It would network through the existing power lines. We'd go to trade shows. 2,000 people would show up. It was like the coolest thing ever. And we took a couple of $1 million of Ray Norda's money. Anyone know who Ray Norda is by sign of hands? Oh, that's sad. Ray Norda was the founder of Novell. He actually was really the founder that erupted all the technology here in the Valley. So we got a couple of $1 million of Ray Norda's money and proceeded to lose every bit of it. I still keep this device on my desk to teach me a very, very critical lesson that it takes a heck of a lot more than just cool technology. In any case, towards the end of that money, Ray Norda came in and says, you guys are a bunch of blazing idiots. One of you have got to learn business. So I got signed up to come back, and I got put in the executive MBA program at a really young age. And that's how I ended up as an MBA. Quite by accident. Actually, I went fighting and kicking. And it turns out I was a heck of a lot better business guy than I was an engineer. The real interesting thing about that phase of life, something that I'm really proud to admit now, is my wife and I were so poor that our weekly food budget was $14 a week. I drove a Dodge Colt that had been totaled 4 times. 4 times, not once, twice, 3, 4 times. It leaked oil everywhere. I was so ashamed and embarrassed that I would park the car down at the bottom of the hill over there and I would hike up. Also feeling very, very self-conscious that all my clothes were from Deseret Industries, including my shoes. And all my peers were driving BMWs and Mercedes and well on their career and all these big shots. And really, that was the definition point of why I became a bootstrapper. Anyone that knows me, I see Scott's left, but I hardcore don't believe that most of you should be following the traditional venture capital model. And these 3 stories, I hope, exemplifies it. Last year in my lecture, there was a young man named Terry. And as I was talking, I was teaching the concepts of zigzag, and he was taking notes, not single time. He was taking them double time, if not triple time. And a couple of times I saw his eyes tear up, and I thought, okay, something's really going on. Went to the session afterwards, and he talked to me, and then after he talked to me some more, and he wouldn't let me go, and then he came in and talked to my office several times, emailing me through the year. This past week, he came and visited me again in my office, and once again, there were tears. Terry, one of your peers, started a company when he was in college. He was actually a sophomore, I think a sophomore, maybe a junior in college. He and a couple of buddies came together and says, all in. We're all in. We're going to do this thing. They then proceeded to sign a bunch of personal guarantees, and him particularly signed it. Maxed his credit card out. He had a property that he had built and saved and made some money, leveraged that, and they went into business. $40,000 loss, $50,000 loss, $30,000 loss. You guys in college at your age. So now the dilemma is graduating with a master's degree and preparing to go into the workforce, a great career opportunity ahead, married with a couple of kids, terrible strain and stress on life, and the question is, what do I do with this business? It's been bleeding money for a number of years. All partnerships now disappeared, ran into the woodwork. There was no operator. As a matter of fact, the comment made to me was, everything that you said to do in Zigzag, everything you said to do in Bootstrap, I did the exact opposite. A stupid man learns from his mistakes. Never learns from his mistakes. A smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. And regretfully, some great life lessons learned. But so now does he declare bankruptcy? Or does he carry this large amount of debt forward in his career? I don't know what you guys think. What's the answer to that one? That's story number one. Story number two is a young man named Brady. Brady was in college also. Junior, senior in college, involved in a small startup company that was burning through money like crazy, and then they failed. Well, he saw what was going wrong. He saw the one little broken piece in the model. So he decided, okay, I can do this. I can make this work. Brady took his credit card. He had $15,000. He cranked $15,000 on his credit card. True story. And instantly he was right. The model flipped. Within a year, he was making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Young age, you guys' age, he's the man. So he hires all his buddies, buys them BMWs and Mercedes at your age, driving around. I mean, they didn't pull into stalls sideways. They took 3 to show that they were driving a Mercedes. 2.5 years later, sells his company for $13 million. Pretty good story? Come on, give me some affirmation. Is that a pretty good story? Pretty cool? Not so much. Not so much. 28 years old, financially independent, done, have everything. Let me tell you the rest of the story. Melts down his marriage, can't subscribe to his stinking non-compete, gets in and violates his non-compete arrogantly, just like pulling that BMW through 3 stalls. The company back in New York ends up suing him, coming, repossessing, taking everything, loses everything. Name, reputation, destroyed. Okay, that's story number 2. Good outcome? Not so much. Third story. This one actually goes back to when I was running Mitsubishi Electric here in the U.S. There was an intelligent, crazy smart, one of the smartest young men I've ever met. Your peer, one of your peers, a BYU student, when I was doing the lectures then. And he came and says, Rich, can I just take you to lunch? I have this great business idea. Great. We went to lunch. We talked about it. 6 months later, I get the call, Rich, I got this great idea. I'm really going to do it. Got this great business idea. Can we go to lunch? He takes me to lunch. It's been 13 years. Twice a year, I can count on a call, a telephone call from Dan saying, I'm really going to do it this time. 13 years later, do you think he started a business? No. He's still talking about it. So where's the balance of this in jumping all in versus, having some level of sanity? Equally as disappointing to the point that I mean, forgive me, but I don't even pick up his telephone calls anymore because I know it's just going to be a wasted series of time and lunch. So where's the balance in all this? You know, I have to tell you that one of the things that I really wish for you guys, I just wanted to refer to my notes here a little bit because there's a couple of key thoughts. One of the greatest things that I can wish for you guys is failure. I hope that each of you have some failure along the way because it's where we actually really learn in life. As a matter of fact, I hope that you have a number of failures. When I started an entrepreneur, now he quoted 32, I'm to 35. I've now founded or co-founded, and this is the second half of my career. I mean, this is after running some pretty large corporations. I've now founded or co-founded 35 businesses. 13 have become multi-million-dollar businesses, and 12 have been failures. And you know what? I'm more proud of the failures than I am the successes. So how do you do that much failing and that succeeding rapidly? And I'll tell you the trick. What I believe is it's learning to fail very, very efficiently. The first individual that I talked about is named Terry. His challenge was he didn't fail efficiently enough. 3 years of losing $30,000 to $40,000 a year when you didn't have it to lose and your family was starving, that's not failing very efficiently. The reality is I have a lot of peers that will take a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years doing something terribly stupid, something they never should have done in the first place, and they end up not only losing a lot of money, which is, by the way, pretty meaningless, it's actually the time that really, really matters on it. I felt so passionately about this. I actually have my son in the audience today, and I'm not going to point him out because I don't want to embarrass him too much. But let me tell a little bit. I truthfully believe this to this point. He went on a mission to Japan. The month before, maybe it was 2 months before, he came to me and says, Dad, I'm going to hunker down and create a business. And he did. He created a nice little business to help pay for his mission. And while he was gone, that little business, it erupted. It erupted to 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, $700,000 worth of revenue while you're on your mission per year. 9 high school students working for him while he's on his mission. Don't tell me, Dad, I don't want to know, right? How many of you would like that gig? Who would like that gig on your mission and having that kind of success in a business? Yeah, I kind of thought that same thing. But there's certain challenge that comes along with that. Because then what comes home, if that's the level of expectation, one of my biggest concerns and challenges is I've seen a couple of young men come out of the program that haven't had the failures along the way, that don't have the perspective, don't have the balance, and they end up destroying and melting their entire life down. I know I'm lecturing to you. I'll actually get to some good entrepreneurship material in a minute, but bear with me because I think this is actually the important stuff. And so actually when my son came back, my wife and I were concerned enough that we actually prayed that the business would fail and flounder, which it did, thank heavens. Because you know what? I don't think it's appropriate any one of you guys walk back and are making more than your professors. Because there's something to be said about learning it, earning it, doing it the hard way. And I think we can all think of some examples. Maybe even in this valley of individuals that first time, woo, they hit a home run. And you know what? I'm not sure that that's what it really all boils down to. There's things so much more important than making money. The reality is we are stewards. We're servants in the Lord's vineyard. And it's our responsibility to be righteous, good servants and stewards. And you know what? The finances is the small part of it. I mean, it's a part of it, but a small part of it. It's the learning, it's the progression, it's the understanding. I wanted to finish with 2 stories, and then I'm going to jump in and give you some zigzag meat to chew on. The first story is about my mentor. Let me give you the other side of the story. My mentor is an amazing man. I love this man, and I respect this man like I can't even tell you. He's one of the billionaires here in Utah. I'm not going to tell you his name, but he's very privately. But he donates now everything that he makes. He's funded more businesses in Utah than anyone else, and all of the profits go back into charity and humanitarian giving. The last session that I had with him, his comment was, Rich, as soon as you take the credit and glory and think you're all that, it's all gone. It's all gone. always give all credit to God and all glory to God. And that's the number one premise. This individual lives in the exact same home that he lived in before he became famous. Yeah, he's fixed it up and it's nice, but it's very normal, and he's not setting himself above the world. So I think that, guys, there's a lot to be said, and that you will have success. I know it may not feel like it now. Probably some of you are, I saw a couple of grins as you were saying, yeah, my wife and I lived on $14. We did. We lived on $14 a week. I'm not kidding. It was potatoes and love is what we lived on. And you know what? I love those periods of time, and I'm sure some of you are there, but I guarantee you, each one of you have the capacity and will do amazing things with your life and career. Now's the time you ground yourself. Now's the time that you make the decision. I was lecturing at the CEO conference, and the other keynote speaker was I always forget his name, so I'm going to go read what his name was so I can attribute him properly. His name is Jeff Sandifer. And Jeff was just simply an amazing individual who was one of the professors in the business program at Harvard. And he told about the final assignment that they had begun implementing at Harvard. And here's what it was. In the MBA program, each graduating student had to go interview 10 men, 10 very successful men. The only criteria is 3 of them had to be young. They had to be under 30 or 35 that had just knocked it out of the park. The second group had to be kind of middle-aged guys like me that were, 40 to maybe 55 or 60, and so they'd had some good success. And then the final 4, so 3 young, 3 middle-aged, and then 4 had to be old guys that had had incredible success, but were at the very, very end of their life, 75 to even 90, and they had to go have a private personal interview and spend an hour with each of them. And this was the whole purpose of the exercise. The young guys were all about beating their chest. This is how you do it. This is how you're all the man. This is what makes you so amazing. And indeed, that was kind of interesting, exciting. Then the second were more process and oriented, a little more methodical, a little bit more about protect, a little bit more systemized, a little bit more just cool-headed about it, as you would expect. But that wasn't the purpose of the interviews. The purpose was the third set. It was the older gentlemen who had lived there, been there, done that. And inevitably, the outcome of that lecture was simply this. It was 3 things that those individuals espoused. There was only 3 things that mattered. They didn't talk about their wealth at all. And these men, he shared some of the men that were interviewed. And some of them actually had been involved in all the way from drug running to, not good stuff, to incredibly good stuff. But irrespective of where they were in their life, it all boiled down to 3 things. And I hope you'll take the notes on these 3 things, because this, guys, is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. The first thing was, what I did it matter? Whatever I did in my career, did it matter? And those that had done bad things, they had real serious regrets about that. The second thing is was it moral? Was it worthy? Did it add value? Did it contribute back? And the third and the most important that each one of them talked about, and you can imagine pretty varied lifestyles here, was who did I love and who loved me? End of the day, guys, that's what it all boils down to. Before I jump into ZigZag, I want to share with you my turning point, what made me become an entrepreneur, because I think it's right in line with this. I was at a very young age. I advanced very rapidly in the corporate world. I ran Mitsubishi Electric's PC division here in the United States. I was the youngest general manager in the history of the United States. I ran About.com before we sold the New York Times. And I had a boss at the end of my Mitsubishi career named Dr. Peter Horn. He's the second smartest man I've ever met. Only non-Japanese speaking person in all of the Mitsubishi Electric Corporation. He lived in Birmingham, United Kingdom. He had given me my first big break, and every about 3 or 4 months, he would call up and say, his secretary would call mine and say, I need a chat with Rich. And so I'd get on an airplane, and he did this one particular day, and I'd jump on a plane in Salt Lake, go to Atlanta, into Amsterdam, across the channel into Birmingham. And so I made that trip, and about 20 hours later, I'm standing in Dr. Horn's office, and he motions me in. And this was the conversation that we had. He said, Rich, you've done an amazing job. We're delighted with the progression you've had in the U.S. market. But that's not what I called you here for. I called you here today to have this conversation. You can replace anything in this world, Rich. You can replace cars, jobs, money. You can replace anything. There's 3 things that you cannot replace. Number 1, can't replace your health. Number 2, you can't replace your trust relationships. And number 3, you cannot replace your family. Go back home. If you're in work the next 2 weeks, you're fired. I cowered out of his office, and that was the conversation. I flew 20 hours to have that conversation. On the way home, I had a lot of time to think. And I realized I'd been in India earlier that year. I brought back pertussis, given it to my family, all my boys. They were sick as dogs. My youngest was in intensive care with my wife, caring after him. I was chasing, what was I doing? I was running all over, still sick myself, running all over the world. I was logging 150, 200,000 frequent flyer miles. And as I got home, as I was coming home from that trip, that 20-hour-long plane ride, I realized that the things that I had been doing in my life weren't conducive, and it wasn't really where I wanted and needed to be, and Dr. Horn was right. So that night when I got home, I went into my son's room, my youngest son that had been at that time he was my youngest son. His name was Nathan. And I picked him up, going to hug him. It was like 7 o'clock at night. And he looked at me and started screaming bloody murder and pushed me away. And that was the moment that I actually quit the corporate world and decided to become an entrepreneur. It took me a couple of years to get out, but that is the key defining factor of why I left the corporate world and became an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is an amazing career. It lives life right on the edge. It gives you the opportunity to look eyeball to eyeball with market forces. It does not mean that you work less hard. These guys that talk about making money in your underwear, they're completely full of it. What it does, however, is it gives you the flexibility and freedom to control your life. And so I have to tell you, it's an incredible lifestyle, but it's really, really important that you keep things in bounds and perspective so you don't end up with like one of these 3 friends that I talked about. All right, who's drinking the Kool-Aid with me on that? Did I lecture enough on that? Give me a hand, give me a little feedback here. All right. All right, can I talk to you about ZigZag now? Would you want to talk about ZigZag or do you want to talk about tools? Give me a little bit of feedback. ZigZag. Okay. So ZigZag is my methodology of how I fail efficiently. It's a success formula that gets me success. Here's the odds. Here's the straight-up odds. Those of you who have submitted a business plan, who's submitting business plans? I got some really bad news for you. Your group may kill me here. But business plans typically, in the financing world, 1 out of every 1,000 business plans end up getting funded. So nationwide, of all business plans submitted, 1 in 1,000 business plans ever get funded. Do you like those odds? Come on, you guys are dry bones. You're entrepreneurs, do you like those odds? Not really, I don't either. Okay, how many businesses succeed? Out of 10 businesses, how many end up being successful? 1. That's exactly right, 1. So now I've got 1,000 times 1/10, so I'm at 10,000, 1 in 10,000. Who's feeling good about those odds? Okay, I got even worse news for you. I sit on a number of these boards, and so I beat my colleagues up, and they still like me. I don't know why. Here's the brutal reality, the scary brutal reality. You founders that found a company, how many of you think you're actually going to have a positive exit, even if the business succeeds? It's 1 in 10 again, guys. It's 1 in 10. So your odds are to 1 in 100,000 following the traditional models. I don't like those odds. Those odds actually really, really stink. So here's the reality is all the businesses I've done, not one of them, I don't think one of my businesses ever would have got funded. They probably would now, but it's based on me, probably not my ideas. So I really don't like the odds of 1 in, I don't like the odds of 1 in 100,000. So the model of bootstrapping or zigzagging, the primary reason I love it is I know pretty much it's hardcore static, that if I start 3 businesses, one is going to be a failure. It's just going to not work. It's going to fail. The second is going to be mediocre, and the third is going to become a multi-million-dollar business. And ironically, the hard one is the middle one, the one that's mediocre, trying to figure out what to do with it or not do it. So what I end up doing is deploying what I call the ZigZag Principle, and this is what it looks like. So what's my time looking like here? Okay, so I'm going to go really, really fast. I'm just going to walk you through the model, and then I'm going to try leaving like 5 minutes for questions at the end. So I'm going to go really, really quick. So the first thing I do is I assess my resources. I say, this is where I'm at. This is the resources that I have. Right now I have in my pocket keys, and I have a cell phone, and I have so much money, and I define the resources that I have. It's really important I understand what my resources are before I set my crazy, big, hairy goal. I still set a crazy, big, hairy goal out there, but what I don't do is I don't charge directly at it. Because typically when you charge directly at something, you fail. Any of you skiers? How'd it work out for you when you put your skis directly down and go down the mountain? Does that work out pretty good for you? What do? You zigzag. Where I came up with the final methodology of zigzag is my entire family is climbing in the Himalayas. When you get above about 14,000 feet, you get cerebral edema and pulmonary edema, particularly kids, and it kills you if you go higher than 1,000 feet per day. So we get up there, and I'm looking at Everest, and I think, oh, wow, yeah, I could probably charge all my boys right up that mountain. And woohoo, one of my sons made it to the top. Only 5 died, or 4 died. That's not very good, is it? So it's really a success time model. So rather than chase directly at it, what I do is I still set the crazy, big, hairy goal out there, assess my resources, set a firm foundation. First thing that I do is a sequence of 3. I don't charge directly at it. I say, okay, what's the quickest way that I can drive to profitability? Quickest way that I can drive to profitability. That typically involves doing something, a zig, that I don't necessarily want to do. I call that dancing in my tutu. Oftentimes that's service-oriented. Rather than developing some crazy big hardcore technology that cost me $250,000 that I want to go chase, I'll actually enter the industry and do some level of service to get me to profitability really quickly. Zig number 1 is always drive to profitability. You look around, you define the quickest path to profitability in the context of your big goal, and you sequence exactly like you're skiing. So zig number 1 is drive to profitability. Zag number 2. You add resources and processes. I mean, everyone quotes now Nellett and Skellett, and I love the book. It's a great book. But that's really what it is you've got to figure it out yourself before you start adding resources. My experience is if you put steam onto something too quickly and don't have the gears working, you end up with just a great big jumble mess. So zag number 2 is add resources. Zig number 3 is to then add a scale element. My experience is then you sequence that over and over and over and over again. Now, just exactly like when you're skiing, you very carefully define what your target is going to be, and I typically have 4 or 5 elements that I define. I call this guardrails. This is how I end up failing efficiently. In fact, I'll use an analogy here. I say, okay, I've got 3 months to drive to that profitability point. I give myself $10,000 to do it, and I'm only going to expose this relationship capital to that risk. I'm not going to go out to my entire network, call up all my friends and family and everyone, and in one night have a big multi-level marketing party and destroy all my relationship capital in one evening. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I'm going to expose these 2 or 3. I hope I didn't offend anyone there. But that's typically a model that you do. So you very carefully guardrail or control your risk. And I have 4 or 5 elements. Relationship capital, how much money, duration that I will do it, and percentage of time that I do it. Exactly as you're skiing, you typically look 3 ahead. So I'm not just there, only there. And that's the fear. I mean, the reason most people are afraid to follow this methodology is Gerber. Have any of you read Gerber's E-Myth? Boy, we really got to get reading more business books here. Okay, awesome, good. Don't be afraid. Here, I'm going to give you a book just because you raised your hand. Give that beautiful young lady a book there. You're welcome. All right, so here's the gig. in E-Myth, in Gerber's E-Myth, he talks about the technician. And this is where 90% of all Americans fell, right here, guys. This is what it looks like. Okay, here's my goal. Oh, I got to get to profitability. Walk off in the weeds, never to return. Because you don't put a guardrail on it. You've got to put guardrails, just exactly like you're skiing. It requires an inertia change to shift. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's the trickiest part of the whole equation, because all of a sudden you're moving from, I call it butcher, baker, and patty cake maker. It's like, what's that Rapunzel Tangled show, that horse, Maximus? Is it Maximus the horse? Horse. Now all of a sudden you've got to go to adding resources and processes. Go team, cheerlead, go, 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 come on team, make a few mistakes here, come along. I mean, how'd you switch from Maximus the horse to cheerleader? And the third one is the hardest one. When you get to this one and do the inertia shift, you have to shift to the thoughtful, intelligent Princess Bride. Was it the Sicilian? Inconceivable, you bested my giant, who else did he do it? Inconceivable, that's all I remember. Inconceivable, you bested my giant, you beat my swordsman. Inconceivable, let's have a match of the wits to the death. So how'd you go through those three personas in 9 months? And I'll tell you, it's hard. It's hard. Here's how I do it. I hang up, and this is the practical stuff. I'm going to give you a couple of key little notes here. But I'm going to go through the rest of the model quickly. So the first thing is where you're at, where you're going. Second thing is zig number 1, drive to profitability. Zig number 2, add resource. Zag number 3, add scale. Sequenced over and over and over and over at big steps until you get there. Reality is just like climbing up a mountain. You're a lot more likely to make it up the mountains if you use the switchbacks than whether you climb the cliffs. 1 in 3 odds. Your odds go up dramatically, and the key thing is, dang it, I didn't get to profitability, I failed. Oh, that hurt, that stunk. Back I go, regather, regroup, get next idea, and off you go again. One of the misnomers that there is in entrepreneurship is 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you're out of there. But it's not true. My first 7 attempts were failures. First 7, you know what? 8 worked out okay. 8 worked out okay. So part of the model is just giving yourself a bunch of quick failures where you learn, and there's this balance between failing efficiently and just being a quitter, but giving yourself guardrails to chase and run towards that you can clearly hit an objective or not hit, and then go back and dust yourself off until you get something. Then once you're at profitability, you're fine. You're on your merry way, and you're not going to claim a failure again. So session resources, set a big goal, zigzag zig, and then we talk about guardrails in place. I'm going to give you 2 killer tools. These are probably and they may sound simplistic, these are my 2 biggest killer tools when driving teams. My small teams can kick hiney on teams of, my 5 or 10 people can outperform a 100-man organization every time using these 2 rules. The first is quarterly rewards, fixated quarterly rewards. I call it Pavlov's salivating dog theory. We as humans will do amazing, amazing things if we have a slab of meat out in front of us. We've given all the way from iPods, the group of teenagers that my Johnnies ran, they went to Guatemala. A whole group of 10 kids went to Guatemala for a month to build schools. Crazy, huh? Well, it worked because they had on the picture Guatemala, the reward, tied into very, very sequenced goals that are fixated on the zig, the zag, and the zig. Well, specifically the zig they're titling for. So if you fixate and get your entire team focused on a goal with the 3 or 4 objectives, and we hang it right in front of us. I've been using this for 10 or 15 years, and it's absolutely magic. It's amazing what that mental image will do to you in helping you inspire you and your team to fixate on a goal. So tool number 1 is just like a dog, pant yourself right into a slab of meat and motivate you and your entire team to fixate on a goal using these little bullet sheets. I typically bring them. Does everyone get the idea, get the concept? Sounds simple, but do it with yourself. It's amazing the pain I can get myself to go through on a daily basis. I mean, today I got this gorgeous view. with ducks outside. And I says, if you make this really, really tough call, you get to go out and sit on the bench for 5 minutes and watch the ducks. And guess what? I was all about getting that hard call done so I could go look at the ducks. And so don't be afraid to motivate yourself. Good, I got a little laugh. You guys are awake. All right, ready for one more tool, or am I out of time? Okay, I'm going to give the tool really, real quickly. It's what we call the 5-minute whiteboard. It's in ZigZag Principle. It's one of the most powerful tools. The key is saying no to the wrong things and saying yes to the right things. Everything in life is about the 80-20 rule. 20% of the effort always yields 80% of the result, always. The trick is picking the right 20% to yield the result. Early stages of a business, you do not want to be an A student. You want to be a B student. You want to do the 20% that yields the 80% result. We have each member of the team get on the whiteboard and brain dump every task that they're thinking of or on their list, simultaneously standing side by side on the whiteboard with their name. We then stand back. We put an A by all of the A's. The most important thing is critical to move the business forward. All of the team members then stand back and they look and they say, oh, that's your A. Oh, Emily, you're very, very heavily laden this week here. I can pick up. Then real time, everyone go and cross off what they're doing on the whiteboard. If you see someone falling behind, having a bad day, something jamming up, you can go and actually work on their stuff and cross it off. If someone's holding you up, you can circle it, put your initials by their name. So it's a dynamic accountability tool that instantly you get transparency into not only your priorities, but your entire team's priorities. Sound simple? It is simple, but I'll tell you what, it's absolutely magical. You want to build a multi-million-dollar business? Deploy that and watch your productivity just go completely out the roof. All right. I want to just give a couple, 3 minutes for any key questions. We got time for that? Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
So we just said there about you want everyone their goals, their personal goals, the goals for the business. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
You mean on the sheet?
Yeah.
It's the quarterly goals that's fixated to the zig and the zag. $30,000 of net profit in the month, 5 new vendors, and put this system in place. If we do those 3 things, every single team member of the team gets a brand new iPad. This last year, I've given brand new iPads away. We've given brand new laptops away. We've went on trips to Guatemala. We just all got massages and 2 free round-trip tickets to anywhere in the United States. Whatever motivates and juice up your team, you as a team fixate on that goal, and the 3 or 4 objectives to hit the zag tied into a reward, tied into a slab of meat. Did that make sense?
That was the first tool. What was the second one?
Second tool is just your tasks, the tasks that you're doing on a daily basis for the business. You write down your business, so each member of the team writes down their goals for the week, what they have on their plate, what they're doing in columns. And then you prioritize your own, then you stand back, look at everyone else's, and give feedback. And if someone's doing something stupid that's not putting you towards your Pavlov salivating dog, you say, why the heck are you doing that? That's not going to lead us there. So instantly, you instantly know if someone's faking it, if they're having a bad week, if they're overwhelmed. Everybody on the team instantly knows. Okay? Yep.
You talked about setting a guardrail for the drive to profitability, the first zag.
Yep.
And knowing that if you're not able to hit that, that it's probably a failed venture, so you are failing efficiently, as you said.
Yep.
What are some strategic, some methods to set that guardrail so that you're giving yourself enough time to really try the idea out, but you're not getting deep into debt unnecessarily?
Yeah, you set amount of money. This is what you do. You sit down honestly and realistically, and I now try doing 3 to 6 months, and I'm working on a project with an amazing young woman. It's called Unconventional Kitchen, if you're interested. And we've given her more time because she needed more time. So you set how much time, how much money you're willing to spend, how much revenue you need to drive there, and your relationship capital. Those are the 4. If there's something else, put it down there too. I'm doggedly determined, so I always put a second level of guardrails in place with what I call my intervention network. That's my wife, my business partner, my accountant, my attorney. And what that is there's certain rules and things I don't do. And if I ever violate it, they have an intervention, just like if I was a heroin addict, and sometimes I behave like one. They get me together and they say, Rich, you said that you would not sign a personal guarantee and you just did it. Or you're looking to do it. Or, Rich, you said that only this much money was at risk and you're doing it. Or another one is I don't participate in inappropriate, and I'd never break that guardrail, but if I did, they'd call me out on it. So I have 2 layers of guardrail. One is a financial target with those 4 things I mentioned. The second level of guardrail is just the things in my life I will not do. I do not sign personal guarantees, and businesses I don't have a majority interest in. Period. Done. If I violate that, then I'm having an intervention, and I know it. Okay, make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think we're out of time now. I did pass a sheet up. If you're interested on a weekly basis, I do write a newsletter and do interviews with some of the top entrepreneurs and brains in the country. And if you'd like to receive that for free, you can sign up for that little newsletter, and it'll just come to you. I think it comes every Tuesday morning. And so if you're a hardcore entrepreneur and you want the inside skinny, get your name on that list.